All right, get ready to maybe rethink some things about good and bad cholesterol. We're going deep on a study that links high HDL cholesterol, the good kind, to a higher risk of glaucoma.
Yeah, and this is for folks over 55.
Yep, you heard that right. Good cholesterol, maybe not so good.
Right, and what's really fascinating here is that this kind of turns our ideas about cholesterol upside down.
Really?
I mean, we've always thought of HDL as the good guy, right?
Yeah, cleaning up the arteries.
Exactly. And LDL is like the bad guy.
The villain.
But this study's saying maybe it's not so simple.
Yeah, it's almost like finding out your favorite superhero has like a dark side.
Uh-huh, exactly.
So we're looking at research here from the UK Biobank, which is this huge project tracking the health of hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, it's massive.
And for this particular study, they followed over 400,000 people for an average of 14 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
And get this, during that time, almost 2% developed glaucoma.
And that's where it gets really interesting. They found that the folks with higher HDL were actually about 10% more likely to develop glaucoma.
Really?
Yeah, and those with higher LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, had an 8% lower risk.
So before we all freak out about our cholesterol, can you give us like a quick overview of glaucoma? What is it and why should we care?
Sure. Glaucoma is a serious eye condition that damages the optic nerve.
Okay.
And the optic nerve is like the cable that connects your eye to your brain.
Gotcha.
And if it's not caught early, it could lead to vision loss and in some cases even blindness.
Wow.
It's a major global health issue. It affects millions, and it's only going to get worse as the population ages.
So we're talking about a condition that could potentially steal your sight. And this study is suggesting a link to something we've always thought was good for us.
Right.
That's unsettling, to say the least.
It definitely raises some questions, like, are we thinking about cholesterol in the wrong way?
Yeah.
Could all our efforts to raise HDL, which we do for heart health, would they backfire?
Especially as we age. This is what I love about these deep dives. We really get to, unpack these complicated topics. It's not about ditching our cholesterol meds or freaking out. It's just a reminder that the body is super complex.
Oh, yeah.
And there's always more to learn.
Exactly. And the study doesn't give us all the answers, but it definitely shows how much we still don't know about cholesterol and its different roles in the body.
Okay, so let's try to figure this out. If we assume there's this link between HDL and glaucoma in older people, what could be going on? What are some possible explanations?
Well, one idea is that maybe it's not cholesterol itself that's the issue.
Oh, okay.
It could be some other factor that's affecting both cholesterol levels and glaucoma risk at the same time. Like chronic inflammation.
Right.
We know that inflammation is a factor in heart disease and glaucoma.
So maybe inflammation is the real problem.
It's possible, like finding a footprint at a crime scene. Doesn't necessarily mean that person committed the crime, but it gives us a lead to investigate.
Right.
So inflammation is one suspect.
What else are we looking at?
Another thing to consider is genetics.
Right. Our genes are involved in pretty much everything, right?
Yeah, from eye color to our risk of certain diseases.
So maybe some people are genetically predisposed to both higher HDL and glaucoma.
That's a possibility.
Okay, I can see how genes are involved, but how do we even begin to figure out which genes are doing what?
Well, it is complicated, but scientists have come up with some pretty cool tools. One of them is called a polygenic risk score.
Polygenic risk score.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty technical. Can you explain it?
Sure. Think of your risk for glaucoma as a puzzle.
Okay.
And each gene is a little piece of that puzzle.
Okay.
The polygenic risk score tells us how many puzzle pieces you might have that make you more susceptible to glaucoma.
I see.
And in this study, they found that people with a higher polygenic risk score for glaucoma were in fact more likely to develop it.
So it's like taking a peek at your genetic blueprint.
Right.
And seeing if you have a higher chance of getting a certain disease.
Exactly.
That's fascinating and a little scary.
It is a powerful tool, yeah. But it's important to remember that genes aren't everything.
Right.
Lifestyle factors like diet and exercise also play a role.
Big time.
In our overall health, including our risk for glaucoma.
And that's what I find so empowering about all this. Even if we have certain genes, we still have control over our health through our choices.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
The more we understand about how all these factors work together, the better choices we can make.
I couldn't agree more. So it sounds like we've got this complicated mix of things, cholesterol, inflammation, genes, all playing a role in glaucoma risk. And if genes are so important, did the study look at how cholesterol levels and genetics might be linked?
They did. They looked for specific genes connected to higher LDL cholesterol or total cholesterol and glaucoma, but they didn't find anything conclusive.
Oh, interesting.
But the fact that the polygenic risk score did show a connection to glaucoma, it really reinforces that idea that genetics are a factor here.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not just one single gene directly impacting both. It's more like they're all working together in a complex way. But this whole thing makes me wonder, could focusing only on raising HDL, even if it's good, could that actually be doing more harm than good sometime?
Well, that's a great question. But we can't say for sure from this study alone.
Okay.
Remember, it was an observational study.
Right.
It just shows a correlation.
Yeah.
It doesn't prove that higher HDL causes glaucoma.
Yeah.
It's kind of like noticing that people who carry umbrellas tend to be wetter.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't mean the umbrella made them wet, right?
Right.
This means there's a connection there we need to explore.
Correlation doesn't equal causation.
Exactly.
So what kind of research would give us a more definite answer?
Randomized controlled trials would be really helpful.
Okay.
So imagine a study with two groups of people, similar risk factors for glaucoma. One group gets medication to specifically raise their HDL,
Okay.
and the other group gets a placebo.
Gotcha.
By comparing the rates of glaucoma development, we could see if there's a cause and effect relationship between HDL and glaucoma.
That's a great example. And while we're talking about different approaches, I'm curious about lifestyle changes too, like diet and exercise. We know those can impact cholesterol levels. Could they also affect glaucoma risk?
Definitely. And that's another area where more research would be really valuable. We need to understand how things like switching to a Mediterranean diet or increasing physical activity might affect both cholesterol and glaucoma development. It's likely that a holistic approach combining lifestyle changes with medical interventions is going to be the most effective for managing risk.
It's a good reminder that when it comes to health, there usually aren't simple answers.
Right.
It's about understanding the nuances, weighing the risks and benefits, and working with your doctor to make the best decisions for you.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that no study is perfect.
Oh, right. Every study has limitations. What are some limitations we should be aware of with this one?
Well, one thing is that the cholesterol measurements were taken from just a single blood sample.
Okay.
And not after fasting. So those cholesterol levels might have been different at other times of the day.
So it's like a snapshot. It doesn't show the whole picture.
Right. Another limitation is the participants in the UK Biobank are mainly of European descent. So the results might not apply to other ethnic groups.
That's a really important point. We need to make sure our understanding of health is inclusive and reflects everyone.
Absolutely. And it emphasizes the importance of personalized medicine.
Oh, yeah, personalized medicine.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah.
We can't have a one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare.
I love that you brought that up, personalized medicine. It seems like that's the future of healthcare, right? Using all this information, genes, lifestyle, individual responses to treatment to create personalized plans.
Exactly. And this study, even with its limitations, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
It challenges what we thought we knew, encourages us to ask new questions, and paves the way for better research and better care.
This whole deep dive has really made me think differently about cholesterol. It's not just good versus bad anymore. It's way more complicated.
Right. It's about understanding those nuances and working with your doctor to make the best decisions for you.
So as we wrap up this episode, where can listeners go to learn more about glaucoma and eye health?
There are some great resources out there.
Yeah.
The American Academy of Ophthalmology has a lot of information, risk factors, symptoms, treatment options. And the Glaucoma Research Foundation is a great resource, too. They focus on research and patient support.
I'll make sure to include links to those in the show notes.
Perfect. The more people know about glaucoma, the better they can protect their vision.
And speaking of staying informed, is there anything else our listeners should keep in mind when it comes to cholesterol and their health? Are there other things we should reconsider based on what we've learned?
That's a good question. If something as basic as good cholesterol can have these unexpected effects, what other health assumptions might we need to rethink?
Wow, yeah.
It really highlights how important it is to stay curious, question things, and be open to new discoveries.
Well said. It's all about embracing the complexities and remembering that our understanding of health is constantly changing.
Exactly. Always learning.
And on that note, a huge thank you to our expert for this amazing deep dive into cholesterol and glaucoma. And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep learning about this topic and talk to your healthcare providers. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those eyes healthy. It really feels like we need to kind of reset how we think about cholesterol.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Not about throwing out everything we know, but just sort of adding to it, you know?
Yeah, embracing the complexity.
Yep.
So as we wrap up, where can our listeners go to learn more about glaucoma? Like how to keep their eyes healthy?
Well, the American Academy of Ophthalmology, they've got a ton of info on glaucoma. Risk factors, symptoms, treatments, all that.
Okay.
And then the Glaucoma Research Foundation. They're great too, focused on research and patient support.
Awesome. I'll link those in the show notes for everyone.
Great. The more people know about glaucoma, the better, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of being informed, anything else our listeners should keep in mind about cholesterol and their health in general? I mean, we've learned that good cholesterol might not be so good. Are there other assumptions we need to question?
That is a really interesting question. If something like good cholesterol can have these unexpected effects, what else might we need to rethink?
Yeah, it's a little mind-blowing.
It really shows how important it is to always be learning and questioning and be open to new ideas.
I love that, embracing the unknown. Our understanding of health is always evolving.
Exactly. We're always learning.
And on that note, a huge thank you to our expert for taking us on this incredible deep dive into cholesterol and glaucoma. And to our listeners, keep exploring this topic and talk to your doctors. Until next time, stay curious and keep those eyes healthy.